Hey, so ladies and gentlemen, I want to know, when did America become a bunch of weird, stupid fucks? That's an actual quote from this episode.
True words from this episode.
From a guy that's not living in America. That's the only hint I'm giving you. As far as the whereabouts of David Abbruzzese.
He's in outer space.
Hold on. I had an actual open for the show. Ladies and gentlemen, now accepting the award for Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on behalf of Pearl Jam, David Abbruzzese. That's what never happened.
That's what we'd like
should
to
have
hear.
happened.
Yeah.
Well, not like to hear. I think it's like justice. You know what I mean? It's like, remember how Kim Kardashian went to the fucking White House and got like that chick released because like, you know, she was like wrongfully accused, or like she had like, I think it was a long drug like charge or something like that. This is clearly more heinous than that. Like, David is doing life of not being respected because people have just shunned him from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I feel like Kim Kardashian should probably go to the White House and say something about it. And then Kanye can rip away the fucking microphone and also say something about it.
Being in your head must be horrifying.
What's it like being in Axl Rose's head? Because that's what David talks about. If you guys want to know, like,
David knows.
So
David knows.
This is actually the most important thing that if you take besides that is that if you've ever wondered about Guns N' Roses, because like here's the thing is Guns N' Roses is like Fight Club. Like, I feel like everyone I know, I've met multiple members of Guns N' Roses, and even like I feel like if you went and talked to Slash now, he's like, other than like the things he gets to read off a cue card that Axl maybe feeds him. And I'm sure he'll hear this sometime. I'm sorry, I love Slash. He's literally my favorite guitar player. But no one talks about Axl Rose. And David, like that, he's like, I had phone calls for hours a day for months. Like,
yeah.
What was that like?
They were tight. They were tight. Yeah. David talks about how Axl kind of almost trusted him with the band while they were working together, and put a lot of faith in him. But he also talks about how things kind of fell apart as well.
Yeah, he really humanizes a lot of these people that we see as just characters, you know? It's like, it's so interesting to hear firsthand what it's like to actually know the human behind all
I didn't realize
it
I'd ever have an allegory for Tinder as far as with Axl Rose, but I feel like he ghosted David. You know what I mean? They had a few good dates. Things went really well. Like, you know, they super liked each other for start. And then like next thing you know, like it's like
David
saying like, let's be in a relationship.
David kind of got he kind of seemed like he may have also had a hand in that separation as well. How do you put it? You checked him out.
The fact that he only brought a cowbell, that's his preparation for getting into Guns N' Roses. That's fucking awesome. That's what real men do.
Let's not give away too much of the story. There's a lot of good nuggets in here, so we don't want to give any spoilers.
Nuggets in there.
Guns N' Roses stories, obviously some Pearl Jam info and some stories about him and Eddie. Just another great episode. David's the man. We love him.
So here it is.
David Abbruzzese.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, sorry. I was just preparing to talk to David, trying to get on that level. I don't know if that worked.
You know what? They fucked up this whole weed legalized drug bullshit in America. What the fuck? I mean, if this movement was real, right? This is the problem with smart people stop fucking and procreating in the 70s and 80s, and dumb people, that's all they had to do.
Oh my gosh, the movie Idiocracy is a reality.
Was I just 2020 on my opening from David?
Yes,
good. David is starting 2020. Go ahead.
Well, start it, David. Tell us.
So what they should have done. Is, I mean, when did America become such a bunch of like weird, stupid fucks, in the sense that, like,
I would say Ulysses S. Grant,
and a dumb way of doing things
a while ago
would have been to introduce fucking education. Take some money out of the drug thing, because they're. Hold
on, Dave. Can I just answer your question? Do you remember Alexander Hamilton? He's on a $10 bill. Do you know how he died?
What? Smoking the weed?
No, he got shot in a duel. That guy's on our fucking $10 bill. And I just want to say, when did Americans become a certain way?
No, but he's right. No, it's about education. He's right. Go on.
That's I hear where you're going with that, but he might have done some cool stuff before he did that stupid.
Well, that's why he's on a $10 bill, man.
Yeah. So, but if they would have like said, okay, here's the reality. Here's everyone. Now you're all becoming educated youngsters, teaching, kids the proper right shit. And then allowing it, people to just say it's the right thing, or it's the, you know what I mean? It should have been Congress and the Senate and them saying, look, we're doing the right thing. We're getting rid of all these archaic bullshit things that are taking all this money from all this shit and put everybody in jail. We're going to let them all go because it's the right thing to do, because it's smart. It's like it's just so simple. And with each state doing it on their own, it's created the worst kind of, like, it's the opposite of what we all used to smoke weed and do, you know, like, you know, enjoy it. So now you can get it, but it's become it's such a divisive thing. And it's like, it's made Colorado smarter than Wyoming. You know what I mean? It's
you know what makes me angry is that so I'm a pothead, but I am not a stoner, because I played the freedom rallies and all this sort of stuff. And I believe in the culture. I love smoking weed. But when someone starts going like, dude, this is like an indica sativa blend, but it comes from like Afghanistan. But one of the things that's cool about it,
1992 PRS with a maple top, bro.
Well, that's kind of how I am all the time. So.
T.
Thank you for just diminishing my value completely in one comment, David.
But no,
but you're right. This is why I have problems inside, because I know what you're saying is true.
What you said is true too.
Yeah, that stoners are obnoxious to listen to. Wax philosophic about weed. You know, dude, George Washington used to smoke weed, bro. He was the father of our country. There's a reason why he wrote the Emancipation Proclamation.
He had wooden legs, but real feet.
What?
George Washington.
No,
it was wooden teeth. Wooden teeth.
Wooden teeth. So hold on. First off,
wooden legs but real feet. That's.
Do you want to know?
Seems physiologically impossible.
Google. I want to tell you something. This tells you the level of stupid facts. So I have an innate ability to remember useless things. And in 1795, John Greenwood made George Washington's false teeth, and they're supposedly made out of hippopotamus, but some people say they're slaves' teeth. And he had a set of wooden teeth, but those didn't work. So what he mostly used was either slave teeth or hippopotamus ivory.
See, I heard that the wooden part was just balsa wood that was carved to go over his gums, and that the teeth indeed were slave teeth.
Wow.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And he had all bottoms across the top.
Oh.
No, I'm just joking.
I was like, that must look strange.
I'm still way more hung up on the wooden legs. I don't know.
Hey, look, Google it. John Greenwood. True story.
2 molars in the front and eye teeth in the back. I don't. Seems like if you're gonna have slaves and wooden gum things, you might as well have some fun with it.
Well, I was gonna say, why would you go rustle a hippopotamus when you just, you can take slave teeth?
Right. Yeah.
Thanks, George Washington.
All right. Yeah.
Gift from the Queen.
Yeah.
So we've already derailed the conversation. Yes. Thanks, Ben, for your back.
I think we were talking about education at some point.
No, but it's interesting. Guys.
This is all history. Don't forget it.
No, but it came up in the last episode a little bit too, that at least especially in the United States, there is a bit of a culture of repression and like avoidance of like, well, let's just hide the information because it's going to be fine. But then when shit goes crazy, it's like, oh, well, we were kind of wrong. So let's just do it in a similarly repressed way.
And it's all because the people it's all because the people can't do shit. Regardless of what they say or do, the people they're realizing through Trump that they're just the fucking people. And the only thing they can do is the fact that they have guns. But
so not to say to be divisive, because we try not to be too political, but what is it like from wherever your layer is looking in at the United States now? As an American, because I feel like it's a David Bowie song. Like, I hate Americans.
And as a father and a son and a brother.
Yeah.
And the Holy Spirit.
And a friend. No, because those people and you guys, you're there. You're in it. You're in the shit show, the European and American shit show, and the fact that China and Russia are the way their politics are, is they can cast aside people for the good of the party, for the good of And America can't do that, because in America, I don't have to wear a goddamn mask if I don't want to. because I am guaranteed the right to make that decision. And these people don't give a fuck about science and all that stuff. They don't even watch that shit. All they know is that if somebody recommends they do something, the American thing to do is to say, I ain't doing it. You know,
to be a contrarian.
Yeah.
But these other countries where they're saying you've got to do it, and that's it. You come out of your house, we're going to shoot you. Well, those two countries spent the last week hanging out together, talking about what they put in their package as the new, basically the new power structure of the two countries that still have money and armies and people. It's a real scary shit show right now. That's what it looks like from here. Terrifying. And the fact that here it's different, because if I didn't have any money, I could walk outside and be fed and eat. I mean, it's a place where the trees, the grass, everything is food. And it's also a place that is built in structurally as there are little communities, and inside the walls of those communities, there's enough rice fields, there's enough for everyone to be taken care of. And so
we know that there's rice there.
Well, and probably a culture of empathy that doesn't really exist in the U.S., where it's very individualistic,
actually,
by and large.
It doesn't exist anywhere but on this fucking island, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
No, that's
on an island
incredible.
with rice.
All right, we don't need to try and hone in on where
No,
he's
I'm
at.
just saying, I'm playing Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? Because he's giving us little hints.
Mexico.
Yeah.
The
Mexican
Burbank
islands.
Ibiza.
It is pretty it is pretty terrifying, though. Yeah.
I just wish the parties are so polarized. It's actually, let's get rid of the politics. People that don't smoke weed are still going to be terrified about people who smoke weed. They're not going to understand. They don't want to understand. And they're Americans. So when they're told this is how it's all of a sudden going to be,
There's a vilification of weed because people grew up I remember my mom, to give you an example, when she was in high school, she was a valedictorian. She was such a goody-goody. My grandfather, goody-goody, all goody-goodies. And she used to tell me a story that when she was going to Wisconsin, Milwaukee with her friends, they pulled out a doobie, and she called my grandfather from a truck stop to pick her up because she was so uncomfortable driving with her friends smoking this bullshit 70s, 60s weed, whatever the fuck it was. And then I remember one Mother's Day, and she's going to hate me for saying this. She's like, can I try that? Can I try that? Does it really help? Does it really help? And then she told me the whole time it didn't help. And then she sat there like this. And then all of a sudden at dinner, she starts going, can I eat your ice cream? Can I have that? I'm like, oh, she's having fun. And my dad's like, don't do that again.
Yeah, I got a 72-year-old guy who said he was actually a brilliant engineer, designed nukes when they were first out and all this stuff. And he says, "Why do y'all? I don't know what y'all see in that marijuana stuff. Let's, I want to try." So he paid and drove us over to score, a lid, and we get back to the house, rolling up. And, he's having his 7:30 p.m. libation. And he takes a few puffs and, I don't know. And it goes round and round. And all of a sudden, I'm like going, woof. Okay. I'm feeling it. All of a sudden, he says, I can't breathe. It's like, oh, shit.
Jeez.
Oh, no.
I can't. Am I swallowing funny? I don't feel right. He went through the full. He's 72 fucking years old.
Yeah.
And a scientific mind.
Fair.
And all of a sudden, he got ripped apart just by some Mexican swagweed. But
Oh, gosh.
after it was over with, it was great. Every time, I don't even know. How do you drive on that?
You
But he was
shouldn't.
annihilated and just annihilated.
You know what's really funny is for like 2 months, I lived with this really creepy 60-year-old. Don't ask. And
Wait,
he
you
used
say
to tell
60 or 16?
60.
Don't
And he
ask.
used to, and I was like 25. And he used to tell me like, yo, dude, I used to like smuggle pounds of grass from Mexico on my friend's plane and blah, blah, blah. But like he smoked cigarettes, like American spirits, like, that he got from the reservation for like $1 a piece. And he had like straight up emphysema. In the middle of the night, I just hear, so like No weed for this guy. And he would drink an insane amount of alcohol, like a handle of vodka at a time. And I finally tell the guy, like, man, you're going to fucking die, bro. You're going to die. He goes, well, maybe I should just smoke weed again. I'm like, I don't know if that's a good idea. He's like, can I take one hit? And I had like a little homemade gravity bong. I'm like, all right, man, be careful. He took a hit, he went like and then just falls backwards, totally backwards, shits his pants on the floor. I start slapping him. Hey, man, you all right? He goes, what? I'm like, you passed out? He's like, no, I didn't. I'm like, dude, go check your pants.
Benny, you've had people just slip you acid. Now I heard you just say you gave the guy a gravity bong. I'm talking a homemade gravity bong. So you're talking about a 2-liter pop bottle.
Yes, he's 60. He's an adult. He can make a decision.
Pop bottle and foil and breathe in when I push
Yeah,
down.
I was 25.
Wow.
Yeah.
I still thought it was cool to do like dirty cocaine off a toilet seat. Don't judge me.
I had a 16-year-old do a gravity bong hit, and I heard that pump in the bathroom. You get that warm feeling like, oh shit. So I go in there and he's laying he's scorpioned out, against the.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that bad. It was a little Poland Spring 16-ouncer.
And my mom and my grandmother pull up in front of the house, and I'm like, okay, dude, be cool. He's like, I got this. And I let him go, and he just goes over, head coconut on the sidewalk.
Oh my God. Oh.
I'm picking him up like, oh shit. My mom and my grandmother just walked past us. Is he all right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a little mild brain damage. It's fine.
So maybe real quick. No, go ahead, David.
Passed out in the jam room, so she thought that's what happened.
I was going to say for our listeners, maybe we should reintroduce David since we didn't really
we're
start
gonna
off
do
the
an introduction.
episode.
So
We're
let's do our
13 minutes into the show here.
So welcome to.
That's all right. I'm sure we had them on the
2020.
line.
My name is Benny Goodman. This is my cohort Cory Peza, who loves Miller, even though he's not wearing the shirt today.
I don't discriminate.
And Doers.
I like all
and if you want to send him Budweiser, he'll still say yes to Belgium. And we got to say thanks to Siobhán Cronin for being here. The great virtuoso violinist that is Siobhán Cronin, until she went to Czech Republic and realized that she isn't as good as she maybe thought she was, which is part of 2020. It's becoming humbled. And then third, David Abbruzzese from fucking Pearl Jam. And just the philosopher. Honestly, I realize I think I like you even more as a philosopher than I do as a drummer. And that's not saying anything about your drums. That's just saying that you are a transcendent human being.
Yeah, but I haven't mastered the tone of voice to not come out like, holier than thou fucking experience.
No, you always sound very authentic. I think you're so honest. You're very authentic.
I've held back
great stories.
Stop.
You shouldn't hold back now. We're on our fourth episode with you, so now's the time to let loose.
This was the episode I was going to wear a tank top.
Okay. You can go change if you want.
I was going to just slowly cut my hair as the thing went on.
I put you're scared of scissors on Wikipedia. Like, is that not accurate anymore?
What?
I said I put you're scared of scissors on Wikipedia. Is that not accurate anymore? You say you're going to slowly cut your hair. And the one thing I took from our first interview, the only thing I took from our first interview was that you're scared of scissors. You told me twice.
Actually, it's even deeper than that. It's not that I'm scared of scissors. It's that I have a weird thing that I will only allow someone to cut my hair if they're using those left-handed blunted scissors from elementary school.
Wait, hold on. I got a lot of questions. Where does one realize that this is how your hair gets cut? Like, were you 7 and said there's a certain type of scissor that you need to get?
There are a few times in my life where I went through a lot in a short period of time. I read a lot, tried things. It was the 80s.
Yeah, so no need for haircuts anyway. Right. Who needs scissors?
No, all you had to do is walk by someone who had a cigarette lit.
That's one way to take.
So if you were to say, if you were in a Robert Frost poem and you could follow either Bukowski or Hunter S. Thompson down a road, which road would you take?
Whichever one led closest to somewhere with water and my house.
Very practical.
Very practical.
And maybe if we could get some fishing in. Because I'd like to go fishing with both of those.
Let's say, hold on. Now I'm adding another factor. Let's say that the roads are equidistant from water and your house.
Well, then why don't we just all go together?
Yes.
Because Bukowski and Hunter S. Thompson don't like each other.
Well, I bet if William Burroughs were there, they would get along like two peas in a pod.
3 peas in a pod, David. 3 peas in a
Oh,
pod.
'cause
4
Burroughs-
including you.
Burroughs would be the pod.
You're like edamame.
You know, I actually got to sit at William Burroughs' house with Al Jorgensen once.
Really?
Yeah.
What was that like? How's that happen?
Al says, "Hey, you want to go to William Burroughs' house?" And you say, "You're sure."
And by the way, can you just preference for the people that are
Simple.
stupid and don't know who those people are?
William
who
Burroughs
they
is
are?
a beat poet, cultural icon, probably the poster child for opiate and heroin maintenance.
Jeez.
So basically, like the Maya
Maintenance, okay.
Angelou of don't do that.
William Burroughs is just a bad motherfucker. That's all. What did he do? What did he do that blew our minds? Naked Lunch was one of his, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
The talking butthole. I mean, come on.
he's quite eloquent.
But you know, a legendary guy. This in the same week, I actually also had lunch with Timothy Leary, and what was so cool is when I walked over to him, everyone's sitting around and we're taking turns going, like, man, there was this one time, man, I was like sitting in a tree and like this, and he was sitting there trying to eat this fucking pasta with a look in his face like, God, I'm so fucking over this bullshit.
He's like, I haven't taken enough acid to still deal with your bullshit.
And so I just pulled up. My friend Flano, the guy who lifted, heavy amounts of weight with his dick for Jim Rose's sideshow. He scooted over, and I sat next to Jim, and I said, "Hey, man."
You just casually said that. So you're on the Jim Crow sideshow. Yeah. So Jim Crow sideshow. Timothy Leary.
I drank iced tea through a straw in his penis. We were all having.
Wait, are you talking about the rapper iced tea, the actor iced tea, or the drink iced tea?
Drink iced tea. I didn't drink
Okay.
I didn't drink the rapper iced tea through.
Well, it sounded like something that maybe Beyonce would say about Jay-Z, so I didn't know if it was like your eloquent poetic license.
Ooh, yeah, just to be clear, one more time, I was talking about the drink with a straw. It was not the actor or the rapper.
Okay. Same guy though.
I don't want that rumor to get around. You would drink it.
Blabbermouth next morning.
But I sat down and we had a nice conversation about like sitting there having a conversation. It didn't talk about acid or nothing. And it was nice, it was a good week. But so then going over to
Well, hold on.
Burroughs,
It's like your Axl Rose conversation. So what did you say? If you didn't talk about acid, what does Timothy Leary, does he go like, I think that those are, Sears foam Demas clouds outside. What do you think, David?
well,
I like the topography of this restaurant.
I knew I was talking to a guy who he'd been there and done that. And the last thing, it's like be the most boring shit to hear, or you know what I mean? What we talked about the difference between a good PA and a bad PA, and how some catering better cold. And the day, it was a nice day. It was like the clouds kept going in front of the sun, and every time they did, he relaxed. But people were still trying to interrupt us, and
Did you ever look up and go, do you see Charlie Brown?
No, he was together, man. That dude was way together.
So that's crazy though, because a lot of people who take a lot of acid get like burnt out or crazy, and then a lot of people, swear by it because it was so vilified because of what happened with Timothy Leary only recently.
There are different formulas of acid. There are different, there's 4-pole, there's this, there's that, blah 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 blah, and there's a difference, and
there's different types of lysergic acid dithalmide. Go on.
Yeah, just like there's different types somehow of cocaine. It's like, well, I thought it just had.
Well, there's good cocaine, and then there's stamped on cocaine.
Well, there's good cocaine, and then there's whatever that other shit is that you're paying too much for. But the thing is, there are different. Yeah, there are different recipes and different. I have a book here behind me, Pakal. It's you should get into that.
What is it? Get into what?
Pakal. It's Pickel. But
okay.
I'll tell you about it more later. He was like the guy who 2CB, DMA, all this stuff. He's the one that did it, made it. He was the only one that the government allowed to do it. And then he would have he would then grab a group of people and they would all dose and document their experiences in a scientific and loving way. It was him and his wife. Amazing.
Is that how Fleetwood Mac got changes?
I think at that point, Stevie was I won't even tell you that story.
I feel like everything I say, there's an interesting story that like we need to explore more.
I know.
So wait, but you never told us, what did Timothy Leary talk about?
He did tell us.
Yeah.
We just chit-chatted. We didn't talk about nothing. We talked about what was pleasant about that moment, But it was still one of the most enjoyable, humorous hangs I'd had in a long time. Yeah.
So let me ask you, who's a better conversationalist, Axl Rose or Timothy Leary?
Well, just from experience, I'd have to say Axl. Yeah, Axl really. Axl listens, and he's a very. He's not as selfish. Not as selfish as maybe he appears.
How so? Explain, humanize this man for me, because I don't have a clue.
Yeah, that's interesting.
He communicates. He, when we speak, he doesn't. It's not like he doesn't say things just to hear the answer he already wants. He actually, it's a conversation. And if he doesn't know something and he's interested, he genuinely will express. Well, do you think he's just so used to people being yes people because of how they like the stigma around him that maybe he's pleasantly surprised when you say, "Don't fire me," because I'm laughing at you? Well, yeah, I think the biggest difference was, that's after months of us speaking on the phone together. That was our first interaction face to face, where we were talking. I don't know.
Was that like Craigslist where you're like, hey man, let's be in a band together, and like you talk to each other a few times, and all of a sudden you show up to practice, and now you're like, this is the real deal. This is the guy I've been talking to.
More like a pump and dump.
A pump and dump.
I'm just joking.
So let me ask, you said 4 months you talked to this guy for hours, and then I went back and listened to our podcast multiple times, and I got nothing. Total elusiveness as far as what could you possibly be talking about for 4 hours a night, 4 to 5 days a week for months that would encourage you, especially someone he's listening to what you're saying. What are you downloading on Axl Rose that he's giving you like good advice or... Please tell me something.
I basically was just enjoying. It's like we were sharing opinions about things, based on intimate things, but all in the context of I just felt like we were being real, and we would talk about. He told me about things that no one, that I'd heard the stories, but not the real story. You know what I mean? And
give me a real story that like maybe Cory, myself, and Siobhán never heard of, heard growing up. Did he incite the riot and after James Hetfield went up in a giant conflagration, which is a song on chapter 2?
Yeah, no, those things were more based on the fact that there was a dude that was with him, the guy who said, Axl will take the stage when Axl's ready to take the stage. Energy. He was his guru. He was his magi, whatever, right? The guy would go up and have to fly over the stadium in a helicopter to get the vibe right before he could radio down that it was okay for Axl to leave the dressing room as long as no one saw his eyes and blah, blah, blah. It was that deep, right?
Yeah.
Because Axl was don't forget, a lot of us get into rock and roll because we get out of it the ability to hide from everything we don't understand. And then all of a sudden you're famous and you're a frontman for a band and people expect you to be a brilliant artist genius. And no, he was a fucking scared, to summon the strength he had to go out and do what he did and be Axl Rose. It was just, he's a very courageous dude. Just put it that way.
You seem to have a lot of devotion to a guy that it seems like a lot of people have a lot of bad shit to say about him. And yet you said that, here's something you said in the last podcast. You said that he would probably deny you ever even played with the band or this or that, that you hope you still have a relationship with him. Why is it still an ambiguous thing? Like, how did you lose touch with Axl? Like, why did it even end? It sounds like you guys had a good synergy going.
Well, what happened was after we started working and everything, in front of everyone, he said, Duff was still in the band, Dizzy, and all this stuff. He said, Dave, I'm the captain of the ship. The name is his. The deal's his. All that stuff.
You don't say.
He got all that stuff from the other guys. He got total control of the name.
Yeah, he manhandled them.
No, it was the name that had 14,000 lawsuits against it.
Really?
Of course. Yeah. So, there were a lot of lawsuits pending. When he announced that he was basically turning it over to me. He wanted to go under deck, and he he trusted me to steer the ship on course, and it was a strange dynamic because there was no management. There was no one involved to take all these egos and all these successful players Duff. I'm sure he was like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? And
sure,
get a conversation, all these things. So, but that, and so he was relying on me a lot. And when I decided that I couldn't do it, that it wasn't right, that it was the opposite of what I needed to be doing with music. And I sent it to him in a fax because I wanted to make sure it was said right. And then about 4 hours later, I got a call from Kim Neely from Rolling Stone in New York, and she said, she asked if I was all right. And I said, yeah, why wouldn't have aged? Anyway, she said she had just got off the phone with Axl. And then he called me and literally for 2 hours screamed. I put the phone down on the table, and my partner Sherry and we just sat there 2 hours before I reached over and just hit off. That every other word was fuck. I was a dark lord sent to keep him from bringing light to the world. I mean, really intense.
Well, it sounds to me like he wanted you to be his confidant, and you basically he did a trust fall into you, David.
I think I was. I think he. I know he trusted me.
You let him down, dude.
Well,
not in a bad way. It's he put way too much on your shoulders because he says he wants to be bigger than the biggest band was in the world.
I didn't know he would get. I didn't expect him to blow out like that. I expected us to converse and I would have still been a part of it or whatever. But I really felt like just what I was feeling about the music and where it was going and what it could be that would help him versus what he wanted it to be. What
was that conversation? So what did you think would help him versus what you were doing? What would have helped him?
What would help him was to put out a fucking unbelievable record that he's the fucking, his band,
Mm-hmm.
Not Slash's Snake Pit, not, you know what I mean? But actual fucking, the music that was happening when I was there with Podboy and all that, it could have went where it should have, which was, Axl had, in Guns N' Roses, I didn't feel like the emotions and what he was trying to say, and it didn't really fit that bluesy rock thing. I think he needed something that was way more where the music was enforcing what.
Well, Slash is a very unique guitar player in that there's not a lot of people that can do the blues thing in the style that he did in Guns N' Roses and be successful the way that he was, because he's a blues shred player. Not to say shred, but he's a really fast, technical blues player, much more than a B.B. King or an Eric Clapton, in the sense that he literally murders it on the Hollywood scene when you had everyone doing the finger tapping, Eddie Van Halen shit. He was doing the pentatonic scale in a very cool way. So yeah, you can't do that type of Guns N' Roses, in my opinion at least, without Slash, because it's saying you want to do Aerosmith without Joe Perry.
Well, that was the thing. We would do these songs that were new with Podboy. He is Nine Inch Nails in my opinion. That he's programmed all those drums for all those years. Robin Fink, the guitar player, he was playing with Cirque du Soleil when he came to us. And
so wait, Robin Fink from Nine Inch Nails was playing for Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah,
and Podboy.
And then I brought him in. He was brought into the fold of
through you,
the GNR thing. No, luckily, right before with me, it was like, and it was mention of him, and it was like, oh, absolutely. And then when I met him, I was like, it's the first time I've ever met someone in that format of presentation that was charismatic, and he was a star. He was a fucking, he came in, he's like 6'5",
great guitar player,
Adonis, no eyebrows. And when he put his guitar on, it was just like his fashion it was sick. It was just off the charts. Very charismatic player, and Podboy is the same way. And Duff with that music was the same way. It was just a totally different thing. Was
Duff offended? Like you said, it kind of alluded to it, but Duff is an original member, and obviously, like you would think if someone's going to have like the ship to rebuild a band, Axl would hand it off to Duff. Do you think Duff was upset by this?
Well, don't forget, Duff had already at this point sold his interest in Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, but wouldn't you think that he would still be the next in line?
Well, don't forget though, Dizzy
was a keyboard player, but he wasn't on Lies and he wasn't on Appetite for Destruction. He came in the Illusions, and a lot of people think that's the Van Hagar era of Guns N' Roses.
Did you notice how incoherent and fucked up Duff was during those successful years? But he's, Duff's sense, he's really remarkable recovery, but his he was so wasted because the band was put together. Greg Gilmore from Mother Love Bone was approached to be the first drummer, but he didn't have the look that the label was looking for. They weren't really, they didn't meet in high school and put it together. They were a product band. They were built by an idea and a marketing strategy, and Izzy Stradlin wrote a bunch of great songs and yada, yada, yada. Craziness.
Izzy Stradlin is, again, a perfect example where a lot of people don't acknowledge his element, because if you listen to those first records the bounce back and forth.
But that wasn't his role. He was getting paid for his elements, but the fashion of the band was Slash. So, Izzy, it's just like Hamilton and Aerosmith. He's the one that wrote those riffs. Or not Hamilton, excuse me, Brad. You're in Boston, right? Brad.
Brad Delp.
Yeah, no. What? Aerosmith.
Not the band boss. You talking about Whitford?
Brad Whitford?
Brad Whitford, the guy who wrote
Aerosmith.
Riff from Aerosmith ever. But, the fashion of the band, he's in the back, just like Malcolm from AC/DC.
So this is all to say that your idea for the direction of the band was different from what Axl wanted, or is that where the division started?
Well, the division started when it was like, this isn't Guns N' Roses music. This is and I thought it was actually something that could be even, more, more, maybe not as successful, but more important to be created. And I thought if Axl was courageous enough to do it himself, just as a record for himself, just put out a solo record, I still think he could have went with his name and still played those huge shows in Rio, with a real, a band that had music that was integral, that could pull off the exciting performance of those gun songs too.
Can you explain something to me? Because you were there again for the genesis of the Chinese democracy thing. But I read at one point that he called him Brian May from Queen. who happens to be one of my all-time favorite guitar players, had him record a bunch of songs. I've even heard some of these demos because, they were leaked on the internet forever ago, years before the album even came out. And then he goes, nah, I'm not going to use those versions. And it's not that Bumblefoot, for example, isn't an unbelievable guitar player. He plays on Lost Symphony, Singularity. He's amazing. There's nothing wrong with him at all. In fact, he's one of the best guitar players on the fucking planet. But why, if you have Brian May fly from fucking England and get the guy that like supposedly inspired you see him at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert, the whole nine, like it's clear he was a huge Queen fan. Why the fuck would you not release the 5 songs with Brian May? Why would you, does that explain that? Like explain that Axl Rose logic.
It's the same. It would fall under the same reason why he wouldn't put out even an EP of this powerhouse of a band under his own name. It's because what he did with Brian May wasn't Guns N' Roses, and he still, he owns the name. He has all the responsibility for all those lawsuits, and quite frankly, he probably can't afford to be, whatever that Brian May stuff. It just wasn't. He couldn't call it Guns N' Roses. So.
Mm-hmm. So going back to the 2-hour phone call you were talking about. So what happened after that? Was that it?
I heard he pushed a couple 1,000-gallon saltwater fish tank over.
Wow.
What? Really?
Yeah.
Jeez.
And then that was about it. He had, I guess Josh Freese came in and right after me, and basically the thing was that I just was not to be mentioned. But I think it's a testament to the fact that there was a real camaraderie, a trust there between us that he never publicly, because if he has a problem with somebody, he typically comes straight at him, whether it's in a song or, but yeah, the fact that he's never, it makes me think that he understood where I was coming from. Maybe, I understand his reaction because I understand him. So maybe leading me to that.
So let me ask you this. So let's say Axl Rose sees this podcast, which he'll never do, but let's say he does. What would you say to him?
If we say Eddie's name 3 times right now, Eddie will see this podcast.
Eddie. No, what would you say to him? Because it sounds like, I don't know, I'm just being a third-party omniscient, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong. It sounds to me like you guys are really good friends. He was relying on you. He put too much on your shoulders, and now it's let
him say. Yeah.
So basically, if I got word that Axl, wanted to say hello or whatever, we never really were like, hey, how are you? How have things been? We were leading up to something. So I don't know how that would go. I think if I saw him, if we were in the same room, I would feel comfortable walking over and giving him an embrace, and he is really a big guy. Wow. I was kind of disappointed when I first met him because he seemed too big to beat up.
Wow. It's amazing, though, how...
It's an important thing in a rock and roll band that a drummer...
can beat up the singer?
Yeah, can come over the kit and just throttle the guy at any moment. That's rock and roll.
Right.
Or give him 17 stitches.
But, I didn't know I was going to cut him. I wasn't really thinking injury. I was thinking... Take that.
Was that the beginning? Was that the real beginning of the end?
No.
You want to give some context to that? You're referencing the last podcast, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was the.
I found that a very peculiar thing.
Turn around and hit my. I felt, I didn't feel respected by Eddie in a lot of ways, but I understand it now. I mean, we were all going through our own stuff, but, and when he would turn, it was like we would be on stage. I mean, if you look at any of that old stuff, he and I connected a lot. I mean, we looked into each other's eyes a lot. And every song, I mean, we communicated because, and on such a deep level that I knew where to take it. I knew, what to expect and that sort of thing. I knew if he was going to go, what kind of energy we were taking into the next jam, if he was about to, whatever it was. Or if he wasn't getting enough, if he was putting out more emotion than usual, then I wanted to as well. And so we would connect on those levels. And probably did that with the other guys too. But after the show, that to me, the music was the most valuable and most intimate, most honest, everything. It's the way I understood things, and it's the way I expressed myself, honestly. So having that closeness, even with the whole band, and even to me, even if it was just my perception, still I know that they knew the value of it. It surprised me. The next morning in the hotel lobby, it was just a hey man. There was no
like a disconnection.
Connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that was, I don't even remember the question now because I haven't.
We were referencing the
beginning of the end.
The incident on stage, I think, with the stitches was
the stitches.
the catalyst.
It was like the and versus the one.
So there were times where on stage, I'd be pissed. I mean, in Milwaukee, I was pissed at Eddie, and it distracted from the way I felt about what I was doing. So I grabbed a stack of dough and I was storming around the parking lot, just walking up to random people as they were leaving, handing them $20. And then, I decided to quit.
I wish I was at that show.
I got my bag off the bus. I'm wearing wet shorts, Birkenstocks, a tank top. My hair's wet. And I mean, it's like 20 degrees in Milwaukee. And I'm walking across the parking lot, just fuck it, I'm out of here. Fuck those guys. And it was because I went on stage and I didn't even know where the rest of the guys were. And then they came on stage and I was like, this is bullshit, man. We're playing in front of 7,000 people. This is like, and we don't even see each other before. There was one time we went on stage to play and our guitar player Stone wasn't there. He was playing backgammon. And he heard us playing and came out and started playing. He was like, what the fuck? So Jesus. I got pissed. I split.
Wow.
I was the only one.
What world was this like in the 90s, dude, between Axl Rose and Pearl Jam? Like I could never imagine playing in front of 7,000 people and then not playing because of backgammon. Stone Gossard didn't go on stage because he was playing backgammon.
He was just down there, and I mean that's how it was, and I didn't understand it, but we weren't close enough that there was no, our manager loved the guy, let me down a lot, represented the band very well, but what he did was the band told him how things were, and he was the one that said this is the way it is to people. I mean, he wasn't directing us, he didn't. He wasn't, what would have been best for that band would have been just like U2 did. Their manager tricking them all into getting into a room and with a therapist and fucking remaining a band. It was one of the greatest bands I've ever seen, or, Pearl Jam in those years was a force to be reckoned with, a live show.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just real,
Yeah.
And that same energy happened every time we worked together in the studio. It was just magic. It's just the way it was. We each did our own thing, and it was what worked with everybody else's thing. So when we got that disjoint. So anyway, I walked back because I was freezing and realized how stupid I was. $20 in my pocket, I wasn't a member of the band yet. So I went in and I told Eric Johnson, our tour manager, I said, I need to see everybody, we need to talk. So we had this small little dressing room, and everybody was in there, and I came in expecting to go, okay, blah, 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 blah. And as soon as I walked in, they attacked me.
Oh, wow.
Fucking
wow.
Yeah. Eddie said, I ask him how he's doing too much. It's like, I see you in the morning, you say, hey, how's it going? And then later that afternoon, you walk up, and you say, hey, how's it going? Okay. And then
what a strange criticism.
Stone, and Mike, they said, you call our room on days off and see if we want to do anything. If we want to do anything, we'd let you know. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I'm just standing there going,
Were they
what?
always like this, or did they turn into this like as soon as fame hit?
I don't know, because we didn't, fame didn't hit yet. We were on
So they were like this before the fame.
It's just they were like this that day.
That day.
Uh-huh.
And it was like that, right? And so I'm just sitting there going, holy shit. And then I said, well, how about if we just meet in the dressing room 10 minutes before we go on stage? That's all I ask. We can all be in the same place and go together. Okay. And that's what came out of that. So then we started meeting in the dressing room 10 minutes before we went on stage.
Did the dynamic improve?
On stage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because, all of a sudden I felt respected in that, but I also saw the difference, like us going up on stage together, everything changed at that point, it took on more of like, it was us experiencing this rather than individuals,
Mm-hmm.
Because
Sure.
for me, I didn't really know these guys except for the odd stories and the quirks. So my relationship with them was strictly on the stage. I mean, we didn't rehearse. we never rehearsed. I mean, we would take 2 months off and then, meet, play Jeremy at sound check, and then that night Eddie would drop a sound check, a set list of songs. Oh shit, I haven't played that one in a year, 2 years. But yeah, it was an interesting band.
Yeah. Well, I think you need that level of having a team or that camaraderie to have that magic on stage. And like, it's interesting because it makes me think of like my personal experience as a violin player. Like a lot of the biggest gigs that I've played, let's say like Trans-Siberian Orchestra, I've always been kind of on the periphery. You're kind of the violinist, or you're playing in a string group, and it's like, okay, the instructions are, here's the music, go on stage, like don't interact with people, don't try to talk to people, don't bother anybody. And I'm like, well, wait, I mean, if I'm making music with someone, I want to understand like, what is it that makes them tick? Like, what's their personality? What do they love about this piece? Like, I can't have an experience with someone on stage, a guitar player that's on the other side of the stage in a giant arena, if I feel like that person's a stranger to me. And I always thought that was so weird, like this weird sort of management, like putting people in pods or like, leave me alone, like don't interact. I mean, that's not, I never understood that, because that making music is all about like the human experience, and relationships.
Right.
And
it's a trip to me because it's like there were bands, rock and roll bands that were like that, like Aerosmith, right? Mm-hmm. And I would say what you just described is probably what it's like for them on stage together now.
Oh, we could probably get right into that at some point. Oh my God.
That's one thing I love about the Stones. Those guys are still a family. They still laugh at each other. I mean, they have inside jokes that go back 50 years that still every night when they play. Like Mike and I had inside joke every YouTube video. You'll see Mike come over and look at me, and I'll look at him, and we'll both go. Because we both saw when we were little kids, we were both exposed to a trailer for a porno on beta tape. Where it said, it's erotic, and it had a candle and a vagina, and it went poof, and it blew the candle out. I was like 13, bro.
Wow.
But Mike and I bonded over that story, so it's just like, but there are groups that don't interact, and it blows my mind. But those are performance. Those are shows, yeah. They're not like bands. They're not, you know, it's a production. It's a different thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But do you think you could be a band and a production? Because I feel like Starset is a pretty good balance between being a straight up production, like a Broadway play level production, but at the same time doing all the tracks live and really having at it. And even though it seems like it's fake, it's really not that fake.
It is. I mean, yeah, it depends on the balance of what goes on. And no, I'm saying you're right. There's a balance. Like, it is achievable, I think, you know, and it just depends on how the person.
Absolutely. Look at Pink Floyd, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
And it just depends on whoever's really running the show, how they balance, you know, what attention is given to the production and what attention is given to, you know, playing music and creating a culture, you know.
My eyes were open when I saw that Sting did that when the Police broke up. He did that with, you know, Jones on bass and Hallmark Keen playing drums. He showed the recording and the rehearsing, and then the fashion, the outfitting, the stage design, the lighting. He showed that whole process of that first solo album, and it, you know, it tripped me out. It just was like, wow, I never considered that there was someone saying, yeah, I think we're going to lose the pink shirt on Omar because it's kind of bleeding away. It's like, wow. You know, I just, I like having wardrobe and things like that. You know,
but there's also different elements to show where I agree with you on that. It would bother me as far as a live show. I saw the behind the scenes on Nine Inch Nails live show where they have the craziest 3-dimensional like see-through LED screens, and you know, he was able to manipulate all kinds of stuff where the band would be on all types of stage and do it live. And I thought to myself, this was one of the first times, because I saw it at Lollapalooza the first time he broke out that stage show. I remember thinking to myself, this was the first time I had seen like the shtick, the gimmick in Gypsy Rose Lee, where you're like, this is cool. This is fucking cool, because I have him behind the drummer singing into a video camera, but now it's coming on these LED screens. Bless you. You could see the guitar players behind, and it was fucking badass. And it was all live, and it was done really, really, really well. And Robin Fink.
I mean, it goes even back to when they would hand Peter Criss the roses when he sang Beth.
I hear you calling.
You know, I mean, it was a production. It was a show. Back in the day, they used to create the music and the fashion, like David Bowie, the music and the fashion and the stage and the presentation. The producer did all of that and presented his production and how he wanted to do things. You know, Brian Eno is a genius.
I was just thinking, dude, that's weird that you said that. I was literally just thinking Brian Eno between the U2 stuff and then the Alice Cooper. Yeah. What a great keyboard player.
Eno, don't get me started. He is not a musician. He's a mathematician, and he plays like this.
Oh, his parts are fucking awesome is the point.
I love it. You know, he 6 strings bothered him on a guitar, so he just cut off 5 of them and just did everything he wanted on the one, and he calls it a straight guitar. You know, I mean,
amazing.
Yeah, he's next level. But
you should do the
like you too. He produces the records because they want to go out and play stadiums, or they want to go out and do something intimate. That approach is taken with the sounds, you know, with all the theatrics of the audio in the songs, you know. I mean,
sure.
They knew they were going to be singing Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For to 150,000 people. That's why they wrote it. That's why it was there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that just like in Talking Heads as well. I mean, Brian Eno would produce an event, just like, I guess it's similar to, you know, Broadway production, you know, where they're creating the music and the set and the whole thing, you know.
It's theater, yeah.
Incredible.
When it's all down, you just burn down the house.
I was never a part of that, you know. There were my drums, there was my stool. I fucking hit things with sticks, and it worked out great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you kind of embody that style of rock and roll.
So David, what's inspiring you right now during all this craziness? Like, you said that your friend that you want to make this music, but like you have resolutions. You said you were going to say yes to things this year. Well, like that's a very positive message, but like where were you before and what made that change?
I was growing up.
How long did that take?
52 years.
We're also growing up.
Lifelong. I put stuff up, but no, there were just events, and I was in one spot, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to go to some completely different spot, and wow, did I? And I did it because I felt like where I was at, there was nothing. It's like all the inspirations and experiences I had that got me to that point needed to keep happening. There was more to it, and I knew enough to know that I couldn't set a plan of what that was. So I surrendered to the events of however many years it took before music became the only way I could, all the things had run their course in the way I was doing them. And so the way I look at stuff now, it's just, I don't know. I look at music different, and I feel like there's a point to it. That was always my question, producing or doing whatever. It's like, what's the point? Why am I doing this? Why should it be there? Why, all this. And here lately, I feel like I'm closer to I feel like I don't know it yet, but there is a point to getting back to creating. And what I was wanting to do with Sean in making my own, my record was, basically for it's the gamut of people that I haven't talked to in forever, and sharing things with them that they would understand, and for my daughter as well. That was the big motivating thing there. Plus, it's fun again.
Yeah.
How long did it take for music to be fun again for you? How long was it not fun?
Every time I played, it became really painful for a number of years. To sit down and play, I would only sit down if I was recording. I would only sit down if I was performing, because it was really such a commitment to being uncomfortable. But it became, I guess, when Natasha did that, and I lived in this unbelievable place with a ballroom that Pancho Villa had danced in, and I had all this gear from my studio in Seattle all in there, and I was in the middle of nowhere, and it was like, wow, okay, years worth of whatever, I just totally immersed myself in the process of recording and playing and seeing ideas through, and all this stuff. And then my life got the wrong marriage, and I learned a lot through like how much music was a product of my surroundings, emotions,
Sure.
And what I needed to do was get out of that situation, and music wasn't going to do it. So, it was just like, it just started playing, but it was always still there. I was always still creating and satisfying myself, but it just, it was, I knew what felt right, what felt good, and what was rewarding, and those things weren't there for a little while.
Yeah.
So, and again, music came from me not understanding, and it being something that I had, an understanding of. And so here I was in a situation that I understood, and I understood that music had no role in it.
Mm-hmm.
Sucked.
Yeah, can imagine. Well, it's lovely to hear that you're...
Anybody who's married and it's the wrong thing, get the fuck out. Just get
I
out.
know. I think that's great advice. I think a lot of people feel stuck or powerless. And I think you don't realize sometimes how a toxic environment, regardless of what or who it is, can totally drain you from your purpose.
Oh my God. Yeah. And that's the thing.
And also be the inspiration.
The part is once you, that's it. I mean, everything is the inspiration. And once I got, I didn't get away from the influence of that poor decision. But once I got away from it, it added to the palette,
Yeah, sure.
That's pretty incredible, dude. And I gotta say that, like, we couldn't be more honored. First off, that you came out of hiding for a moment to come talk to us and share all of your experiences.
Always incredible stories. Yeah.
Yeah, no, well, it's just really interesting because it's one of those things where, like, you meet a lot of people and there's a lot of different echelons of bands. And like, again, you're a band, like I had your poster on my wall. I wanted to go see you guys. We were talking about guitar teachers the other day, and my first guitar teacher, his idea of teaching me a lesson was sitting me in front of a Van Halen live video and then sending me home with a Who bootleg, on like the He Hides Speed dub. And, to be able to talk to you, but have you be so authentic in a truly inspiring way, in a sense that, like, even like when you said something that, like, when I listened back to it, because I listen back to these things obsessively to see how, like, obnoxious I really am, which is quite obnoxious, by the way. You said that you hadn't played a big show in the time period of people just being caught on their cell phones. And I thought to myself, like, wow, what a parallel to your personality. You know what I mean? Like there was no quantizing. There was no light on your cell phone. There was no none of this tomfoolery. It was just the real deal. And like, you come from a point, and you said the word organic a lot, but like, really, when I think of organic as far as people, like the way that your mind works, the way that you approach drums, and like your philosophy on life and music, it is consistent. It's like Eddie Van Halen's amp. Every single channel's the same, man. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you literally have a consistency about you, and there's like a vibe about what you do, whether, I'm sure it's what you do in your everyday life, to how you play drums, to how you even approach your relationships, and knowing that wisdom. It's funny how philosophical you are. Not funny, but it's interesting how philosophical you are. And then again, to go back and listen to, like, say, those old records yesterday, just for me, and to listen to them with a new scope, knowing where your mind was at, knowing where the band mind was at, it reopened doors for me in a lot of really cool ways. But, hearing you talk about it in such a humble way, in such an honest way, in such a way that's not insulting to anybody, it's just the truth. Like, clearly it's your truth. It's just wonderful, man. And I gotta tip my hat to you, because you could be so many different ways than this, and you chose to be this way. And I love you for it, man. I really respect and love the shit out of you for it. And I think that you're fantastic. And I gotta tell you, what you did on Lost Symphony for us is unbelievable, and I can only pray that we continue to make music together.
Oh, we will. There's no problem.
Absolutely.
And one day, if you do these sorts of things, we can run down any of those records. And because I've got one of those stupid memories, like, if I hear a crowd on a radio, I know it's a Pearl Jam live show when I was in the band.
Amazing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you choose records that you want us to listen to? And here's the thing: is Siobhán hasn't listened to them the same way that I have, and maybe Cory has
I'm
to
learning,
some extent.
Yeah, I would love to.
So it'd be really cool
for me.
This would be a neat study for her. So why don't you say, hey, listen, if you want us to listen to verses, or here's a bootleg from this show, like, listen to that one, and you want to talk about it, let's do a podcast just on that.
I would love that.
I would love that. I'd love to see Siobhán.
I'd like to do it as as a kind of a teaching retrospective as well. I think you three would have interesting questions after hearing. I would send you a slew of
and I'm sure everyone listening and watching would also have those same questions, or a lot of the same questions, because, dude, this is so beyond interesting.
Yeah, I know we have a lot to learn from you.
You're like saying, like, hey, man, come into the dressing room. Let me tell you about this historic time in my life. And you're very carte blanche about it. And I am almost unnerved at your openness and how candid you are. And it's really cool. And what a great suggestion. It was one of those things that, like, I was like hoping maybe Marty Friedman or something would do that. He's like, oh, I don't do podcasts. Like, I get it. Like a lot of people aren't into that stuff. No, I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to talk to me for 2 hours either. But the fact that you're like willing to come back for round fucking 3, holy shit.
Yeah,
I'll talk to you about it all day. I probably listen to anything you're to send me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Amazing.
Plus, I'm going to work on my backdrop next time. I think this is kind of cool.
It looks good, man.
We love it. I think it's great. Perfect.
All I did
Valhalla.
was I set my phone on the mic stand in front of the couch.
There you go.
But I think
I have a mic stand in front of the couch.
TV on was a good touch. What do you think?
Yeah.
Get some dynamic lighting.
Some
Exactly.
Perfect.
key lighting. Well, listen, thank you so much, David. I want to tell everybody you've been 2020, but I cannot wait to be the first person to go back with all these two, Cory Peza and Siobhán Cronin, with David Abbruzzese from Pearl Jam through the most historical time of one of the coolest freaking bands in the world, and hear it
I'm excited
from
for this.
behind the fucking nest that is the drum set
I'll
on
show you
stage.
other songs from other bands too, because you got to hear the stories of Waddy Wachtel and Bernard Fowler. You got to hear the stories of
So much to
not a
cover.
fan.
Wow.
Hodgson,
We can't
Roger
wait.
Hodgson. Oh, Roger Hodgson from Supertramp. Ooh.
Amazing.
So if you guys are listening to David, he's selling our next podcast, and we'll set that up after this is all done. In the meantime, go to 2020-d.com. Let us know what you think. LostSymphony.com. Hear David coming up on chapter 2. This is chapter 1.
Yes.
You can buy all that stuff. Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon.